Yeah. It was pretty early where we could watch all the way. It's about.
Yeah. So I like this big. So once you get going. And so I've been. Yeah, so I've been.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's very. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm not very good at making it. But you know, hopefully I'll get better. What I want to do. And yeah, and they. I found out that the. Sort of started. It's hard.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was like, it'll probably be a disaster, but. And 18-year-old is 4 to 5. But 9-year-old is some. I got my saw your program. It's nice to see your face. Is there anything the audit? How are you? Hey, how are you?
16.
Yeah.
They're breaking that.
They are. And it's changed.
A little bit.
Yeah, Colby's gonna talk about it. And then,
All right, the time is now 6:30. We'll go ahead and open up public comment. Views expressed by individuals during public comment do not necessarily reflect the views of the city of Fremont, have not been verified for accuracy by the city. As a reminder, city council and staff are not permitted to respond to comments or questions during the public comment period in accordance with Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-103. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person, shall not contain items included on this evening's agenda. So if you, again, we have a public comment up until 7 o'clock. If you would like to speak, we have a sign up sheet here at the front. You can come sign in, as well as there are comment cards over there that you can fill out. We'll begin. Susie Newcomer, you're first.
I'm Susie Newcomer at 340 East 4th Street. This is in regards to some issues I had with the CSO officers, back in 2022. A fight had broken out between, two of my dogs on June 27th of 2022, which was exactly 1 week prior to the 4th of July, when fireworks are able to be blown off. I went to the hospital due to trying to break up the fight, and, I had been bitten by the dog. He actually bit off the end of my finger. And, as I was being taken to the hospital, the paramedics, administered morphine to me for the pain. The CSOs came out to the ER as I was medicated and, to talk to me about this. I'm assuming, I really don't remember much of it, but, I assume that this is when I signed my rights up for the dog. And, but I really don't remember. And, I never received any paperwork for the surrender. And also, no one contacted me on the well-beings or what was going to happen to this dog. If I would have known, I had a farmhouse for him to go to. And, I just don't understand, and I don't get why nobody contacted me. In the meantime, the CSOs contacted my niece about what happened and requested that my two other dogs had to go to the vet. One of them was not even injured, but they said that they had to go. Then they had to go. They were trying to here in Fremont. Nobody would accept them. And, so the CSOs contacted Heather again and said, you need to call Arlington to see if they'll accept them. So they did. And, so the CSOs, took them to the Arlington vet, and, I ended up with a $300 bill from this. And I understand it's kind of like 2 years later, but I still am not understanding, what happened and why things didn't happen, and why I wasn't informed of what was going to happen to this dog. I mean, he was a big dog, but, and so, this $300 bill I feel was unnecessary and totally pointless. And that's all I have.
Ray Tuff.
Ray Tuff, 323 West Fifth Street. I guess I'm here for about the CSOs too. You guys, I'm sure, have read in the paper that last summer, both myself and my mother was arrested due to the comments or statements made that were false from a CSO officer. So basically what it came down to was there was a dog named Booney that was dropped off in front of my shop. And I tried to get the rescue to come back and pick it up for 9 months. And this dog was supposedly dangerous, but to me, he was just fine. He let me do anything that I wanted to, but Fremont Police showed up at my door, wanted to take him to Forever Homes and saying that he was dangerous based on hearsay. I said, no, they needed a warrant to come take him. They couldn't get the warrant. They couldn't take him. They ended up dropping the charges, but still that was after running our name through the mud, and making it seem as though we stole some dogs. I think with the fourth CSO being, hired and put in place, that we really need to think about exactly their oversight of what they're doing, because Booney, ultimately, the owner drove here from California to pick up that dog. And his problem, he wasn't aggressive. He was a very well-trained dog. But guess what? He didn't understand our language. He only knew Korean. So that was the whole barrier, was he only understood the Korean language. Otherwise, he didn't understand what anybody was saying to him. That's why he seemed like he was aggressive to everybody. So it was very heartwarming, heart-changing, all in the same time. But that dog almost died because of a CSO thinking they had more power than what they actually really do. So, and then also I wanted to, check to see if this fourth CSO officer is going to allow us to have what was originally agreed upon by council to have CSOs out there 24 hours, you know, because, and if not, then we need to have the grant coordinator file for, you know, some type of grant to have our officers trained and skip chip scanners in all of the cruisers, because the officers are not trained, you know, with the animals. And then last meeting, we made it very clear that the administrator doesn't even really know what's going on, because while I appreciate your good responses to, you know, the parvo payments that was made to Forever Home, there were plenty of companies like within since that time that have dissolved, probably because they couldn't meet payroll as well. Well, we went ahead just and paid them just because they couldn't meet the payroll, but they didn't provide the services. So with the contract coming up for revision here in a couple months, I think, you know, I'd really encourage you guys to take a look at it, see exactly what it says, and let's make things black and white and mean what you say what you mean, you know, so that we can all follow through and follow, you know, more easily. Thank you.
Larry Marvin.
Good evening. My name is Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road, apartment 124 in Fremont, Nebraska. And I'm here to talk about vocabulary, mainly the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence. So the vocabulary tonight is all, and equal, Declaration of Independence, and US Constitution. All men are created equal and all are equal before the law. So how many of you are middle class or lower class citizens? I want you to think about that when we say middle class values and you're middle class, some are lower class. And I want to tell you, you're not middle class and you're not lower class. You know why? You're all created equal. We do not have first class, middle class, and lower class. We're all equal. And if you want to go by some people's definition, you have upper first class, lower first class, upper middle class, and middle class. So you're fifth class citizens if you're middle class, huh? Depending on who's you're talking to, who's the bully that's telling you you are middle class. So are you brainwashed into thinking you are middle class when I want to tell you, as American citizens, you have the obligation as a citizen to see that every one of us are equal and that we're all first-class citizens. And as you know, I went into the bathroom here about 7 months ago and I wanted a handy bar to get pulled up. And so I just checked again now. You did get a one vertical one. I mean, yeah, horizontal one, but you never put the vertical one there. And if you go over to our library that got renovated, we have a horizontal bar behind the stool, one along the side of the stool, and a vertical one to help pull you up. And I'm spoiled, and I want the one to pull me up. And you still have not done that. And I've told you how to win-win and save the money by suspending a couple of our high-paid employees, and you can get that done. And it still isn't, because I just looked in there. So whatever I have to say, it goes in one ear and out the other. And so let's look over that. So each of our disabled citizens are first-class citizens. And if you don't think so, just ask their parents or their relatives, and they'll let you know. So why have you failed to bring these restrooms up to the ADA standards? And I remind you that I installed my handy bars in 1977. That's 46 years plus, okay? And you still haven't obeyed your own laws. Our American ADA standards, you do not understand that. Our attorney has not been able to use his good English and convince you to be law-abiding citizens and take care of the handicap. And when I reached up to get it, and it wasn't there for me, spoiled number one Larry, I told you about it. And you just kicked the can down the road. You don't understand that as good citizens, you have to treat every one of us. And when you're not treating the little guy, he's still first-class citizen, or she is still first-class citizen. And if you're not treating them right, you're not treating me right. And so I'm here to tell you, from my opinion, you're not treating most of us right. And so I'll end with that. So thank you.
Barb Bushy.
Barb Bushy, 2037 East First Street. I just have a request for future meetings. I know I missed a lot of meetings when I was sick, but I would kind of like an update on the Port Authority. You know, I know the one in North Platte is going, and I think the ones in Bellevue and Omaha are going also. And I thought we all came into this about the same time. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. For those that are just entered, we are in open public comment up until 7 o'clock. Gives any member of the public an opportunity to speak on any item on the agenda. If you would like to speak, there's a sign up sheet up front. There's also comment cards on the table.
Mayor, I'll confer with the attorney, but I wanted to talk to Barb Bush about a completely unrelated subject. I know what she said here, but I didn't want to need to speak to her. And I just wanted to make sure that me getting back to talk to her after she spoke wasn't going to be a problem.
Okay. I don't think so.
You know, so, yeah. Like, yes. It's fine, Jamie, but no, not me, yeah. Yeah, yes, they've been right, you know, I was like, I was.
Yeah, you got.
Well, yeah. But, I brought this. No, I mean, it was wonderful to visit, but it. Are you? Good to see you. Sunday we were. That's nothing. You know. Yeah.
When did you hit that first one again, Travis? When did you hit that first one again?
I find it.
You just haven't like Travis, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Probably go.
Yeah. Yeah, I love, yeah.
How long is the drive? Probably really long days.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy to happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure you never know. Something. It's go down your.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I. They're doing their own sites. He makes me glad that someone just a side. It was pretty. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Not saying that now. Tyler. The time is 7 o'clock. That concludes our public comment. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and open up the city council regular meeting. Again, the time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. This time we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. 8 council members are present, Mayor.
Next is mayor's comments. It is my honor this evening to recognize 3 individuals for their incredible service to the community, to the city of Fremont and the community. First, we have Dion Menking with 10 years of service. Mr. Menking's been with the Department of Utilities since 2014 as the electric metering and service supervisor, and he is here, and please come up and accept your service award. Right. Next, we have Scott Henke. Scott's been with the city of Fremont since 2009 as a maintenance worker 3 in the Parks Department. I believe as Scott is here, 15 years of service. All right. And finally, our last, we have Jamie Carlson, 25 years of service. Jamie has been dispatching since 1999 as a dispatcher 1. She started with the Dodge County Sheriff's Office, and then when the city of Fremont as the dispatch centers merged, she was promoted to lead dispatcher in 2018. Let's recognize Jamie Carlson, 25 years of service as a dispatcher for the city of Fremont. I want to thank all 3 of those individuals. It is kind of rare to have every service award member here to accept those. So what a great night. Thank you for your service to the community and to the city of Fremont. All right, that concludes my comments for this evening. We'll move on to item 1 is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the April 30th, 2024 regular meeting. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make that motion.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second it.
cast your votes to adopt the agenda.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Next, moving on is the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from council or staff? Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about number 2 briefly.
Okay. Any items for staff?
Mr. Mayor, we'd like to remove number 9 for some updates to that contract.
Any items from the public to be removed?
We remove item number 5, please.
If there's no other items, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Items 3, 4, 6 through 8, 10 through 17. Councilman Horn. Oh,
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I apologize, but we'll need to pull number 3 as well, because there's, as part of the claims is the payment that's related to item 2.
okay. Okay, I'll redo the motion. This would be to approve the consent agenda items 4, 6 through 8, 10 through 17. Councilman Von Baron,
Motion to approve.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 2 is resolution 2024-100 to amend and terminate the interlocal cooperation agreement with Dodge County for joint public service center and purchase the 1/2 interest in Outlot A of the Fremont Technology Park. This will have a staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. What this interlocal agreement does is actually it terminates the interlocal agreement that was put together at the time that the city had thought they would build a joint law enforcement center out at the North Business Park or Tech Park. And so as a part of that, the county bought a 1/2 interest in the property that the Joint Law Enforcement Center had been planned on. Now that we're moving forward with a different location and we're not doing a joint facility with the county, it makes good sense to terminate the agreement and repurchase that 1/2 interest back from the county so that we can then move forward with perhaps selling off that lot since it has all the utilities and paving done around it. Take any questions?
Any questions for staff? Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, the reason I asked to discuss it, I thought it would be good to, I don't know if there is any public comment on this, but allow that. But at the same time, I think it was the question that I expressed during the executive session. I'm not sure I still understand. When we entered into this, obviously, we both thought it was a good idea. And it still may be a good idea to go ahead and rebate this money. But I guess from the point of the taxpayer funds, it seems to make sense to at least understand that the city isn't going to be losing money if we do this. My point being, I don't know the value of the lot. So maybe that would answer the question in itself, if we can recoup our investment and at least stay neutral in that. But beyond that, my reasoning was that both the county and the city entered into this agreement in good faith. We both thought it was a good idea. The public didn't. So if we can share if there's a profit, it seems reasonable to let the county share in that. If there's a loss, it seems to let the county share in that. So I'd just like to understand how more clearly how we're going to keep the taxpayers whole if we approve this.
Well, first of all, the land that when it was originally purchased was purchased with LB $840.
Correct.
And so when we sold the half interest to the county, when they paid their half interest to us, the $201,300, that money was deposited into the LB 840 fund. Like all of the land purchases as we receive the proceeds from that. I guess my most stringent argument about the or point with this is because it's LB $840, the county, I don't know that I think it would be not a good idea to say whether or not we're going to make money or lose money on the sale of that land. It's economic development land. And there's a part of me that wonders if we could, when we sold it to the county, there's a question in Jody's mind only. I didn't talk to the attorney of whether or not we really should have even considered building on LB 840 owned property, because it's the strings to LB 840 property are fairly stringent in that it has to be an LB 840 eligible business that we're selling it to, all of those kinds of things. And so when you put those parameters around the sale of the land, it doesn't seem fair or reasonable. I mean, the county didn't enter into this contract as speculatively, thinking that they would ever have a gain or a loss from the purchase of the half interest.
So let me just turn that around, just as to pose it. So what if the county offered to buy our half?
I personally would advise against it, again, for that.
I'm just trying to
Yeah.
understand what the difference would be.
My personal opinion is they would not qualify to be a sole owner of that property,
Okay.
because they would not qualify as an LB 840 eligible business.
Yeah, my only concern is just making sure we keep the taxpayer whole in this, and I don't have any idea of what the value of that property is or what, and maybe we can recoup excess funds out of it. I'd just like to be a little more clear on that before we approve this.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
I just had a question on the sale of this land, of this lot. I mean, I imagine somebody trying to buy a lot from a public entity is probably, there's an awful lot of hoops to jump through, I would imagine. And I would imagine somebody trying to buy a lot owned by two public entities is probably an awful lot more hoops to jump through beyond that. I'm just speculating, you can confirm, but I would say a single owner on this property is going to make it much more attractive than two.
Yeah, that'd be correct.
Councilman Horner.
I'm just doing the math. I mean, we had $201,300 go into the LB 840 fund when the county bought it, and we're taking that same amount out. I don't see a loss. I see zero. So I'm just trying to understand the loss part of it. I don't see it. I see it going in, the vote passed. I guess if you wanted to go back and, beat up somebody for a past decision, you could say, well, why'd the county buy the land if we hadn't had the thing approved? Maybe that's a lesson learned, and maybe that's what we do in the future, but it seems to me like the balance sheet is zero, so there's no loss.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I guess I echo some of that sentiment. And additionally, I look at something called goodwill and faith in one another, as far as they entered in good faith with the city at our request to have a joint law enforcement center. It seems fair that now that it did not pass, that they receive those funds back from the city who initiated it. It's called working in good faith and goodwill. I mean, there is something called goodwill in retail as well, too. It makes a difference.
Okay. Is there anybody here to speak on this item? From the public, yes. Yep.
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I appreciate the fact that Councilman Von Baron brought this off of the consent agenda for discussion. I have a slightly different take than what I've been listening to here. I tried to do some research on this myself and found it difficult because the original agreement or the interlocal agreement didn't have all the exhibits, therefore couldn't discover whether or not there were terms and conditions relative to termination and buyback. Seems to me that if there aren't terms and conditions specifying buyback principles, that's important to understand now that the council is taking consideration of, in essence, spending city funds, $200,000 of them. I'm glad to hear that it was LB 840 funded. Not that I thought it should have been, but that it's recognized that this came from the LB 840 fund. Council should recognize that since this has happened, we spend an inordinate amount of LB 840 funds on Tech Park. Now, and you also gave back $900, almost $1 million to the state because Tech Park didn't pan out. Now you would want to give back another 200,000 plus of taxpayer funds to buy back property that I remember being at a meeting when it was openly admitted that the city is a very poor land developer. Should stay out of and not get into the land development business ever again. And here you go, expanding your potential for land development business. I question whether or not the county can sell the property just as easily as the city can. They own it. Or they share in the ownership of it. Why should the responsibilities be shifted or reassumed by the taxpayers of Fremont? There's been a lot of inactivity going out at Tech Park. Not a lot has been built. We've spent a lot on infrastructure. I think there's $8 or $10 million invested in that property out there. And now you want to spend another $200,000. I don't believe the taxpayers thought this was a great idea in the first place. As far as the police station being put out there, the county thought maybe that was a good place for the sheriff's department. Maybe it's still a good place for the sheriff's department. And they wanted to build a jail, which was not really fully disclosed particularly well in the bond issues that were rejected by the city and the county, by the way. It wasn't just city voters that rejected this, it was county voters. So I have to question whether or not the city should be taking on this obligation, even though the funds would be coming from LB 840. You spent all those monies and then some. LB 840 funds ought to be used to help create jobs and promote small business. That's what it's for. This is not a good purpose. You haven't shown a good track record out at Tech Park. I would encourage you to not buy back this property and to encourage the county to sell this property on their own. They can hire a real estate agent, just like the city does, to sell those properties. They can divvy it up however they would like, and then, sublots, just like the city does for the rest of the properties. But I encourage you to encourage them to sell this property themselves rather than to put this back on the taxpayer. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public? This item? Okay. Seeing none, any additional comments from council on this? Councilman Horner?
I just want to reiterate my first question. I'm having trouble seeing the loss here. And I'm not trying to be belligerent or anything or like that. I mean, this was an inflow of $201,300 coming in from the county. And now that the deal failed, we're sending it back. Whether I'm paying as tax as a county or whether I'm paying tax as a city, I'm still paying tax. I mean, I don't see the loss here. And I don't see how this is, we're moving it from one pocket to the other in my mind. And there's no loss. There's just not, unless somebody can explain what I'm missing. And I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the room, so maybe I'm missing something.
Councilman Jensen,
If there's no further discussion of this, I will make the motion to approve resolution 2024-100.
I had somebody in the queue, so we'll let them go. Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, nobody's saying anything. This has to be a loss. It could very well be a gain. You know, if that lot could be sold at a net profit. So my only question is that we're giving money back that was put together in good faith and without not necessarily knowing whether there's a loss or a gain. If there is a gain, I'm fine. Let's split it with the county. I have no problem with that. I'm just trying to understand how whether it's 840 or Fremont funds, it's taxpayer money. And so I'm just trying to understand how we at least remain neutral on it.
Okay, there's a motion from Councilmember Jensen on the floor. Is there a second? Councilman Sukram,
I will second it.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Item 3 is a motion to approve the April 10th, 2024 through April 30th, 2024 claims and authorize checks to be drawn on the proper accounts. And
Unless there's any other questions, you've got the report and everything, and we pulled it just because of number 2, which is now passed.
okay. So we can go ahead and approve this then.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to approve.
Councilman Jensen,
Second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 5 is to receive the March 2024 annual reports. Is there any update on the reports from staff? If there's not, we'll go to the constituent who had the question.
Ray Tuff, 323 West Fifth Street. I just wanted to first thank you guys for having Forever Homes revise their reports. They provided the corrected reports last month. However, we found that they still are not corrected. Just for an instance that on January of 2023, on January 20th, there were 2 dogs that were brought into Forever by the CSOs. And then because the owner went to the hospital, and so per ordinance or whatnot, they stay for 5 days under that program. And then Forever Homes took them in as the sit and stay program for initial however many days, but the report shows that 1 dog came in at stray at large. The next, the other dog comes in as other. They actually left the facility after 30 days rather than 21 days like claimed on the report. So they have the one that came in as stray at large returning home to the owner after 21 days. However, the owner still remains in the hospital to this day. And the other one just falls off of the reports. So we don't know what the outcome is, but I know that both of them were both placed back into the owner's home by an employee of Forever Homes that was taking care of them. And so I'm going to send you guys a separate email to explain that to save the, pictures being put into public record. So I just encourage you. I know we have the appeals group. We have another ordinance group working on all the animal stuff. Maybe we need a citizens advisory group to pay attention to these reports because they're still not corrected. Thank you.
Right. Any additional comments from council on this item? If there are not, I'd take a motion to receive. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to receive the animal reports.
Councilwoman Ganem,
I second.
cast your votes to receive the reports.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 9 is resolution 2024-101 to authorize the execution of a professional services contract between the Eastern Nebraska Office of Aging and the Fremont Friendship Center. This was pulled from for staff for clarification. I will need some to receive. I need a motion to receive. Councilman Vaughn.
Moved.
Councilman Jensen,
Second.
cast your votes to receive.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Mr. Hanson, you want to go ahead and
Good evening, Councilman and Mayor. Nick Hanson, Parks and Rec Director. You'll see in the resolution, the old one was from ENOA. We have a renewal contract with them. There was a typo for 25,865 that they reimburse us. It actually needed to say 25,925 with an error, but the correct one should be the 25,925.
Okay. Is there anything else? Okay. Thank you for making that clarification. If there's no other comments, I would take a motion to amend the resolution with the corrected amount of 25,925. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to amend.
Councilman Sukram.
Yeah.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Take a motion as amended. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve as amended.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, that concludes the consent agenda. We'll move on to unfinished business. Item 18 is ordinance 5673 for a change of zone from GI General Industrial to AR Auto Urban Residential for a portion of the vacated Claremar Street located between Railroad Street and Cumming Street. This would be for second reading of staff report.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. The next two items are related. This is to change the zoning from industrial to residential on that portion of the Claremar right-of-way that is adjacent to the residential lot and that ultimately will be attached to that residential lot with the final plat. The following item annexes the entire right-of-way, and then at our next meeting, we will have the resolution that vacates that portion of Claremar Street that will be attached, and all of the items can be voted on at that time, and then we can move forward to get the signatures on the final plat.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for staff on this item? Anybody from the public here to speak on this item? Okay. Councilman Von Baron?
No, I've followed this one. This one was in front of the council about the same time we were going through our Central Park issue with the flooding coming off the tech park. And I've lost track and I tried to get a hold of Justin and do some background. But Jennifer, once we do this sets the stage for the engineering and the final paving and the resolution of this issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, what these items will do in the vacation of it will allow us then to sign and file the final plat. So those pieces of the right-of-way can be attached to the abutting properties.
Okay.
As we have discussed in the past. All of the rest of it is, I'm not sure exactly where that is. I'm not sure if it's all in the capital improvement plans or where it is in the design process. That's a different department.
Okay. Well, I was just trying to get up to speed on it because I had, like, as I say, it's been a while since we dealt with our issues at Central Park, but I was looking back on some past notes and, right now where we are on the second reading, the city had given out a sheet that said, okay, here's the timeline for doing this. And I know you're not the one that's held it up, but, right now we are where we said we would be with the second reading in about May of 2021. So I guess the pertinent question is there anything that could hold this up from here? Is this now just a matter of our actions?
For this portion, for the change of zone, and the annexation. The annexation requires 3 readings. That's why
Right.
we're continuing all 3 readings with the change of zone as well. And the next meeting will have the vacation of the right of way on the agenda. Those can all be taken care of, and then the plating can be completed. So that's all that this is addressing. It doesn't address any of the other issues.
So the rest of the detail will be forthcoming.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other additional comments from council in this item? Okay, if not, I would take a motion. This would be for second reading. Councilwoman Ganem,
I move ordinance 5673 for second reading.
Councilman Jensen. Cast your votes. This would be for second reading.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead.
An ordinance to the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at the southeast corner of Claremar Avenue and Cumming Street, legally described as part of the Claremar Avenue right-of-way dedicated to the city of Fremont on August 9th, 2023, that is adjacent to Lot 1, Block 55, Hall subdivision, located in Section 24, Township 17, North Range 8, east of the 6 p.m. Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska, from GI General Industrial to AR Auto Urban Residential, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on second reading.
We'll move on to item 19 is ordinance 5674, annexing a portion of the vacated Claremar Street located between Railroad Street and Cumming Street into the city of Fremont. This again would be for second reading. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, I'm here to answer any questions you might have on this annexation.
Are there any questions from council on the annexation? Okay. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay. Are there any additional comments from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
Yeah, I'll make the motion to move ordinance 5674 to the second reading.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second that.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor. An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located at the southeast corner of East Cumming Street and Claremar Avenue, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on second reading.
All right, we'll move on to new business. Item 20 is to receive our audited financial statements for the fiscal year end September 30th, 2023, as presented by Forvis LLP and city staff. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer Knabb, our finance director.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, Jennifer Knabb, Finance Director. We're going to go ahead and kick off. We've got Colby Jensen here, who is our head auditor, who's here from Forvis to introduce and discuss the audit, and then I will follow with comments from city staff. Colby?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As Jen mentioned, my name is Colby Jensen, Audit Director with Forvis, a public accounting firm. My office is based out of Omaha, Nebraska. I've had the privilege and honor to work with the city the last several years in different capacities on their financial statement audit. And today I'll present the results of the audits that we performed as part of our agreed upon procedures. So our report here is covering the financial statements for the year ending September 30th, 2023. Our responsibilities as the auditor are to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement and express an opinion on whether or not those financial statements are free from material misstatement. In accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards, we perform our test of procedures to ensure that balances are properly reported and determine whether or not there are any potential control issues that may be present that would need to be communicated to you all today. I want to remind you that an audit financial statement does not relieve management of their responsibilities of the information contained within the financial statements, or you all as oversight of the financial information contained or managed by city personnel. As part of our audit, just to confirm, we are required to remain independent, and we have verified that we are independent of the city in all aspects. On page 2 of this document, it goes into some additional information specifically related to government auditing standards. Again, in determining whether or not the internal controls over compliance and internal controls over financial reporting are properly in place. And then at the bottom, the uniform guidance overview and responsibilities is specifically related to the compliance over federal funds, specifically any major programs that are required to be audited if the city expends over $750,000 of federal funds in an annual period. On page 3 of this document, it provides an overview of some of the significant accounting policies and practices of the city. One thing to note under the first bullet with significant accounting policies is that any information specifically related to the city's financial accounting processes and policies can be found in note 1. It's what we consider to be the roadmap of the financial statements. So if you have questions on how something is being accounted for, or curious as to where a particular transaction may be reported or found within the financial statements, Note A is the area to look for that information. This section also notes that the city was required to adopt a new accounting standard, GASB 96, specifically related to subscription-based information technology arrangements. It's a fancy word for saying that if you have contracts related to software or subscriptions related to software agreements, that the city would need to consider whether or not those meet that definition and would be required to be reported on the city's financial statements as a right to use those assets with an offsetting liability. There was an impact to the city's financials. However, from the city and the utility side, there was an immaterial impact of approximately $100,000 specifically related to that standard. We also consider whether there's any unusual policies or accounting procedures in place. There were none to note. However, did want to mention that the city does use regulated accounting specifically related to its utilities department, which is proper and consistent with previous years and other utility and rate making agencies in which those rates are passed along to customers. The financial statements do have management's judgments and estimates included. We've outlined those within the documents. This just lets you know that there are areas in which the financial statements did require management to make certain estimates or judgments, take into consideration facts and circumstances, historical information to determine whether or not those balances needed to be modified or adjusted. And those specifically relate to the allowance for doubtful receivables, depreciation and lives of capital related assets, the unbilled revenues for utility accounts, and then also the self-insurance, health, and workers' compensation claims. There's certain financial statement disclosures as well that we want to make sure we call your attention to. Revenue recognition, specific information related to how the city recognizes revenue can be found within Note A of the financial statements. Note D covers specific information related to any risk management, as well as commitments and contingencies that the city or utilities may have entered into, and provides additional clarification on those items. On page 4 of this document, it reviews adjustments identified by audit. So as we perform our audit procedures, there may be instances in where we believe a transaction or a balance may need to be adjusted to be properly reported. If that was the case, we would bring that to management, and management would make the ultimate decision on whether or not they agreed and to post, or they also have the option to not post an adjustment. There were proposed and recorded audit adjustments this year specifically related to lease and then those subscription arrangements that I had mentioned earlier, as well as the utility unbilled revenues and related receivables and the bond issuance that happened in 2023. In relation to audit adjustments, there were several adjustments that we brought forth to management, but due to the immateriality on the financial statements as a whole, as well as the additional administrative burden for the finance team to go ahead and record those within the financial statements and push those through the documents, as well as, again, the information having an immaterial impact and would not mislead the users of the financial statements, there were several audit adjustments that were uncorrected, and those are further disclosed within this document. In addition, and attached to this document, management is required to represent specific information stating that they provided honest and truthful feedback and into our inquiries, anything that we asked for, they were willing to provide and help answer our questions and additional information specifically related to that you can review as well. So as we consider all of that information, we ultimately determine whether or not the financial statements are free from material misstatement. Within the audit report itself, the first opinion at the front of that document is the independent auditor's report over the financial statements and supplementary information. We issued a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements, again stating that those are free from material misstatement. In addition, there were the two other opinions that Forbes issued within the financial statements. One is specifically related to the government auditing standards, stating that the internal controls over financial reporting and related compliance. We issued a clean or unmodified opinion, again, noting that there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that arose specifically related to the internal controls over financial reporting, and no instances of non-compliance that would need to be communicated here today. Lastly, the final opinion that we issued was over the compliance on the major federal award program. Of the city's approximately $1.1 million of federal expenditures, we tested approximately $780,000 of those. And that was specifically related to the CDBG program. In relation to that testing, there were no items that arose that would require us to issue a finding specifically related to material noncompliance, and there were no internal control findings over compliance. So again, we issued a clean or unmodified opinion specifically in relation to the federal funds of the city. So overall, thinking of the audit process, it was a challenging year with some of the changes, of course, a lot of new activities coming through with Jen kind of being newer to her role, but we appreciate all of the hard work of the city's finance department. It took a lot of time and dedication to complete this document. It may only seem like it's 80 pages. It's a lot of work to get into that 80 pages of a document. So we appreciate their willingness to help and our partnership with the city.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and present my section, and then we'll open it up to questions if that's all right. I'm Jennifer Knabb, Finance Director. First of all, just some general comments. I've now been here a little over 5 months, and it's a short amount of time to absorb quite a complex organization between the utility side and the city. And we've got 8 folks on the team, including myself, and 3 of us are here under a year. So it was a big learning curve, which put a bit of a burden on the folks that have been more established. We put thousands of hours into this and uploaded 700 some documents, as well as just all of the questions and things. And I want to give it just a big thanks to my team. In addition, the partnership with Forbes, we really appreciate their insights and their recommendations, and then also the guidance they gave us, especially around the new standards that we needed to adopt this year. When I'm just going to take us through a couple of the items on here, and then I'll open it up to questions. On page 274 within the packet, the first area that I want to talk about is the expense and program revenues. We've got both the governmental activities and the business type activities. We did have a net increase of 34 million on the governmental and 10 million on the business type. I do want to say that while that looks like a large amount, around 29 million of that is simply because the state of Nebraska relinquished Broad Street and we took on that asset. So if you take that out of the picture, the city side increased by 4 million. The business side, the utility side increased by 10. So I want to be clear on that with the Broad Street relinquishment. And that relinquishment was the 4 miles of pavement, 2 bridges, viaducts, 7 intersections, which is why it's such a large amount. Also on page 275, we discuss the unassigned amounts as far as with our ending fund balances, how much has the city voted to, or the city council restricted for our different activities, debt service, street improvements, what else have we committed, what's been assigned, and then what do we have as an amount which this year was 13 million of unassigned. And that then breaks down kind of what we have to work with the different buckets. I also want to just pause here and note that if you're checking the news on other cities, you may have seen that Ralston announced that they very proudly moved up to BBB+ credit rating, which makes them an investment grade. The city, I say that as a frame of reference, the city of Fremont sits at a AA bond rating, with the utilities maintaining a AA-. And on the utility side, I want to note that because we are a coal fire plant, a AA- is the highest rating we can achieve on the utility side. With my decades of experience in audits and working for Price Waterhouse, et cetera, my personal opinion is that we're a very healthy organization, and we're really made some very smart decisions. And I appreciate when I came on just how far out the city looks and how carefully you all consider what investments we make and the involvement of the community in those decisions. It certainly made it a lot easier for me coming in to absorb so much, to just have it just so well organized and so well governed and maintained. Next, I'd like to go to page 280. And I'll note that 280 to 282, these are our statements of net position and our statement of activities. And what the statement of net position means is it's a balance sheet. And this is the page that you want to look at if you want to compare ourselves to other communities. There are specific regulations and standards that require us to present this in a certain way so that it is uniform with other communities and we can compare ourselves. And then the statement of activity, that's similar to a condensed income statement. If you look at page 282, I do want to highlight at the bottom unearned revenue. And that specifically on the governmental side means that we've got 3.4 million that we have in the bank related to the Broad Street relinquishment. We've received those funds, but we haven't spent that yet. That's what that means. The other area there is the ARPA funds of 4.6 million. Again, we've received them, but we haven't earned them yet. So we note those there. Also on page 282, you can see the different funds there. And under general, that's where you see the 1.3 million. It's labeled Code Enforcement Defense. And that's the Illegal Immigration Ordinance Defense Fund. That's where you see that balance there. The street fund on that column has 10.5 million. And you've got sales tax there as the last major fund. There are in our supplementary information, there is more details on all of the other funds, debt service, airport, and that's all in the back listed. On page 284, this is where you see the net change in fund balances. And overall, we brought back 1.9 million in combined fund balances on the governmental side, with planned spending have occurred in the general fund related to the library. And then we also saw planned work on the street department that occurred, as well as principal and interest payments being made to the debt issued from prior year. Those that led to the drop in that overall fund. On page 286, statement of net position on the proprietary fund side, this is the balance sheet for the utility funds. And this is where we include the internal service fund. And that's where we keep our employee healthcare, workers' comp, and employee wellness funds. Those are all considered internal service funds. And you can see accounts payable for claims that are paid and projected claim liabilities there. On page 287, I want to just highlight here that on this change of net position for the proprietary funds towards the bottom, you can see one, that we show a decrease in sewer. And this is attributable to our additional production costs and the lack of renewable energy credits. And you do also see the interest expense of 1.7 million. But really what I want to point out is this negative amount here is really the effect of us year over year not raising the rates and not keeping up with inflation. And we've remedied that earlier in the year now. And so we should see that start to balance back out, but that's why you're seeing a negative there. Costs have gone up with inflations, but our prices hadn't yet. And then also you'll see contributed capital and costs are covered through contributed capital. And this is when developers come and they've got a new subdivision, whether it's commercial or residential, they're required to put in infrastructure. And so they will pay for under the streets, wastewater, stormwater, and the water underneath there, those pipes. Once that work is done, they pay for that. And then those assets are dedicated to the city. So you see the impact of that, those assets being completed there, but also the fact that our citizens didn't pay for those were paid by the developer. So we break that out for you. On the page 288, that's where you see our statement of cash flows. And this is on our proprietary fund, our utility side. And this shows what cash we collect from our customers. This also shows interfund services that we provide. Let's say the gas department uses electricity, so we charge ourselves. And so we show those trades there. We also show payments to suppliers and employees. And what you see there is that overall, we brought in more cash than is going out in operations. Now, I will say with a utility, and I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, you all have been here a lot longer than I have, so I'm a little uncomfortable, but you know, we have, of course, big investments that we have to make. So over time, you see those stepping stones, and we're paying close attention to how we're forecasting those capital improvements. And we've already earlier in the year indicated that we may or may not choose to issue bonds based on how our cash and our funds are going. Then on page 290, this is our statement of fiduciary net position, and this is a custodial fund. This is the funds that are coming in and out related to TIF. And whether you know, it comes through to us, then goes to the developer or the person holding the TIF bond. This is where that activity is recorded. And in our footnotes, then I'll just note that those are page 313 to 315, where you can see differences in how we look at the government funds versus the proprietary funds. And then also on page 337, that as Colby referenced, those are our expenditures of our federal dollars. And you can see what we spent last year from funds received from the Department of Transportation, et cetera. And I will note that we do have plans to obligate the ARPA dollars for 24-25. Colby then also indicated that we've got this section, which we did include literally every page from our long form in for everyone so that you have all of the information. And we've got the list of uncorrected and omitted disclosures. And most of those there are the equal and opposite of items that were there last year that then affected this year. So you'll see them again. And then we do have some new items there listed with definition. One question that I did receive from one of the councilmen that I just want to address is that we did choose last year and again this year on some T notes that we had that were 2 years in length. And when you have them over a year, there's some additional requirements of disclosures, and we chose not to do those. We don't plan on having investments longer than a year, and the additional pages that would be needed to add in the administrative work, we chose not to do that. But specifically to answer the question, the disclosures that we chose to admit list the type of investments that we have. And we in the city, there's very big restrictions on the kinds of things we can invest in. We're treasury bills and CDs. It also indicates what risk rating, which is level 1, 2, or 3, and we're all level 1. And then it also, we would indicate if we have any foreign investments in that disclosure, and we do not have foreign investments, but we chose not to do all the different pages for that. And it's not something that we plan on having to include in the future because we're just not going to have longer term investments. And so it won't be required. And so I just want to again, just thank my team and thank Forbes for the work that they have put in and the incredible amount of overtime. And it's definitely been drinking water through a fire hose. But it's been a pleasure to participate. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'd now like to open it up for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that report. Are there any questions from the council? Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, Jen, just a incidental thing. It's just my lack of understanding. On page 363, we had a correction of about 2,300,000 roughly, referring to an insufficient funds. I would assume that's just a bookwork transaction. Just
Yeah, that's
trying to understand
correct.
what that was.
It's where we hold it. It's not that it's missing. It's not that
No.
we don't know what it is. It's just where we've got that placed. And that's one of the carryovers from last year. And Colby, I don't know if you want to just comment a little additional on that.
Sure. Just to clarify, it does not relate to insufficient funds. It is related to the internal service fund.
Okay.
So that's
So ISF.
okay.
That's what
Yep.
my bank
So-
tells me. Right.
So that relates to the funds specifically related to your workers' compensation, health, and employee benefits. So that activity is all reported in the internal service fund. And then at year end, that balance is really brought in to the governmental activities. And because the employees are split between both the city side and the utility side, we just recommend that the city consider allocating that balance amongst both the DU and the city. But again, like Jen mentioned, this is something that's been consistent. It's not necessarily that there's funds missing or we have concerns about how they're being allocated.
Okay, thank you.
And we just chose again to just keep it all together in one fund.
Councilwoman Ganem.
No, I just wanted to make an observation because reading through most of this and all of it, we are in good financial health. And that is a real plus for any city. And comparing ourselves with reaching the top that we can get as far as getting loans and our ratings, that's excellent. And I certainly wanted to congratulate you because you first came in, you're so new, and you really walked in the fire to get this done. And so certainly wanted to say thank you, heartfelt thank you for all the work that you and your team have done, and certainly the auditors. So
Yeah,
thank you very
thank you.
much.
You know, I had the big benefit of having Jody, who did this role for many years, and then also Kristen on my team, who was the interim finance director, to have, I think it's very, very rare to have two resources like that when you come into a job new, and they've really helped me be successful.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Any comments from the public?
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road. I have two questions. One is, it looks like that we have a surplus of money from the state when we took over Broad Street, but this North Viaduct, when you're going north, you feel like the whole vehicle is going to pop into a big pothole. It's just a drop off that frightens you a little bit, and you're saying, I'm glad I didn't have a cup of coffee or it'd have been all down the front. But we think that it should be done, and if the money's in the bank, why aren't we putting out the contract? That's my question. The second one would be, I belong, have ownership or voting rights in mutual funds. And the power plant is what I call our mutual fund, whether we call it communism or nationalism or whatever. But sometimes I think we should have a thing that says, because we own it, our rates are this instead of this. And I don't know how you do that, but that would be feedback that I would appreciate, because we're running it and it sounds like we're running it very efficiently. And it'd be nice if we could say, if Warren Buffett owned it, we would be paying this much. Because we own it, it's this much. Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility Manager. I just want to publicly thank Jen and her team and Colby and her team for the great jobs they did. And they did an outstanding job and put a lot of work into this. We really appreciate their efforts.
Okay, any additional comments from council? Not, I'd take a motion to receive the audit. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to receive.
Councilman Sukram,
I will second that.
cast your votes. Councilmember Sukram, can you? There you go. Thank you.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, we'll move on to item 21 is resolution 2024-110, authorizing the mayor to sign the state of Nebraska Department of Economic Development Civic and Community Center Financing Fund Assistance Award Contract number 24-03-385 for construction of an amphitheater and restrooms in John C. Fremont Park.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Jody Sanders, City Administrator, and I'm pinch hitting for Angie Olson, who was with the help of Nick Hansen, together the grant application that ended up in this award for the construction of an amphitheater and restrooms at John C. Fremont Park. This is the same kind of grant that we received when we did the auditorium. We could technically spend up to $1.1 million for the entire project, but we have an estimate that we're looking at about $800,000. So we're anticipating receiving the state grant for half, or $400,000.
Okay. Questions for staff on this item? Any comments from the public on this? Okay. I would just like to recognize the work that was done to establish the Fremont Creative District. And that was a collaborative effort between many people in our community, different groups. And the only reason we were able to receive this grant for $400,000 was because we had a Fremont Creative District established. And so that's exciting to be able to have that and already see the benefits of this new amphitheater and restrooms, and very exciting to be able to for the future of the creative district to see where this goes. And it's already, again, paying dividends to the community. So I'm looking forward to this project and congratulate those in the city for their work and the community to receive this grant. Are there any other comments from the council? Councilman Horner.
Nope. If there are no other comments, I was going to make a motion that we approve resolution 2024-110.
Councilman Sukram. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 22 is resolution 2024-111, accepting and awarding the bid to Sadler Electric Inc. for the 2024 Traffic Signal Improvements Project. What? Staff report.
I'm expecting Justin to come down from third floor
Okay.
momentarily. Yep.
Just like that, you know.
Good evening, Justin Zetterman, Director of Public Works. This first contract we have is for the 23rd Street signals. This first phase of the project will upgrade the signals at 23rd and Luther, Bell, and at Clarkson. We had several bidders on the project. The bids were all good. We have got about 730 budgeted for this phase of the project. A chunk of this 730 is also money that will be coming from the Deers 8 development as a part of that development agreement for the improvements to the Luther Street signal, which will include some left turn lanes to aid with getting the traffic that's going to be generated by that development out onto 23rd. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Sukram.
Oh, yeah, I know we've got all these other roads on here, but was Summers kind of thought about since we're having issues there?
Summers is getting extra thought. It wasn't planned for this year, but we are working to try and come up with a solution to what equipments we've worked at it, and we just can't get it to go back to what it's supposed to be doing. And what it's doing now is better than 3 green lights and 1 red one, which is what we previously had. So.
Any other questions for Mr. Zetterman on this item? Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay. Any additional comments from council? Councilmember Sukram?
No, if anyone didn't have any more comments, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2024-111.
Councilman Jensen?
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 23 is resolution 2024-112, accepting and awarding the bid to Western Engineering Company, Inc. for the First Street Asphalt Overlay Project.
This is our annual asphalt overlay this year, and likely going into next year will be First Street. It's a little longer project than what we've done in the past to go all the way from Maine to Claremar. Fantastic bids on this project. I was clearly a little conservative with the 1.7 I budgeted for a $635,000 project. But fortunately, we're seeing hungrier contractors this year. So that's been kind of across the board with infrastructure, that it's looking a little better for once. It wouldn't surprise me if we see that go up a little bit as we dig in and get that top coat off, if we find more damage under First Street, either where the bricks are or from the trucks and all the additional traffic going east of Bell Street. So we may have some spots where we have to do full depth repairs that we'll find that we just can't tell from the surface. But all in all, a really good bid. Western is a good company. I've not worked with them while here, but I have as a consultant, and they do fine work. And in a year where we've had some surprises come up with the parking garage and traffic signal that got hit by lightning this morning, and beyond Summers. Yeah, a little extra in the budget's not going to hurt us this year. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, are there any additional comments from council? Councilmember Jensen?
If there's no additional comments, I'll just make the motion to approve resolution 2024-112.
Councilman Sukram?
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
And then item 24 is resolution 2024-113 to amend engineering services contract with Speece Lewis for the Bell Street Viaduct project.
Justin Zetterman, Public Works. Speece Lewis has been our design engineer and construction manager on the Bell Street Viaduct project. As we all know, the project has gone long. And so one reason for this is that Speece Lewis has spent more time out there. They've also done additional investigation when we found, well, in this one area, there were welds that weren't completed when it was first constructed like it should have been. We made the decision to have them go to every pier throughout the rest of the bridge, and let's make sure that there weren't more melt welds that got missed. And something like that took quite a bit of time, and we had to have flaggers because we're working over the rails and things like that. We found other inconsistencies, which required them to do a little new design work to match what was really out there instead of what we thought we had from the as-built. And so this just represents the extra work they've done, as long as the extra time that they'll be spending out there to get us open by June 1st is still our goal. Been out there yesterday. It's in good shape. We just got a couple more pieces. We need some help with the weather and things, and they'll get it wrapped up.
Councilmember Vaughn.
You already kind of answered my question, but June 1st, what are we feeling? 100% sure?
No. They are in a very good spot. The company they're using for flagging kind of backed out this week and said, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to be there next week like you wanted us. And they've got a contract with another company, but they're not available till the 10th. So they've got cleanup work and things they could do. Hopefully Friday, the first company will be out there. The railroad will not let us do any work whatsoever above the tracks, even if it's on top of the deck. We can't run the paint sprayer over and across without having a flagger down below. And so it's just compressing those last few tasks. And then if the last 4 days of rain hits when we can't take it, I don't know. It just
Well,
not
I asked
confident.
the question tongue in cheek, but I appreciate the efforts to get that done. It's affecting a lot of people's commutes, mine
Yep.
included. So
Me too.
thank you for your efforts.
Any additional questions at this point? Okay, anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, any additional comments or questions from council? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilwoman Ganem.
I move we approve resolution 2024-113, approving contract amendment 2 for engineering services related to the Bell Street Viaduct.
Councilman Vaughn,
And I would second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 25 is ordinance 5676, amending Fremont Municipal Code Section 2-102 for regular meetings. This would be for the first reading.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council, Travis J. Cott, City Attorney. This is a suggestion to revise City Code Section 2-102. And really what we're doing is giving council the ability to have a regular meeting that does not occur on the second or last Tuesday of a month. And to move the location of the meetings to other than City Hall if the council sees fit. And that change was really emphasized last year when we had some issues with meetings in November and December, and we were able to do that because the code stipulates for holidays and such to have the meetings moved. But there are also issues with when there are certain elections that are going on or other community items that occur where council may want to move the meeting to a different day or a different location. And this is also going to be coming to a head this summer when there's plans to renovate parts of City Hall, and we'll have to find a different location for these meetings to take place. This change will authorize council to select those locations. Obviously, we'll give reasonable advance notice of where that location will be. But this change gives the council discretion to do that. We're also going to be updating the bathrooms and everything up here in City Hall. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Councilman Horner.
Travis, can you tell me what kind of notice do we need to give if we're going to change the location? Or what's the minimum notice, I guess?
Reasonable advance notice of the location it has been interpreted to 24 hours. Our general rule is 3 days. We like to give 3 days. We'd like to get it in the paper And we like to get it, if not in the paper, published in 3 different locations throughout the city.
Councilman Jensen.
Just a question on the ordinance. Is there a reason not to suspend rules and move to third reading, or is that not possible with this?
I didn't request it, so it wasn't, we don't have it on the agenda. Usually I'd like to have, whether we're gonna move it all the way to third reading, that we have it posted for that purpose. And also on the next item on the agenda regarding public comment, if there's any suggested changes to that in the next 2 meetings, we'll have to amend this section to integrate any of those suggested changes if they are coming. We just wanted to leave that option open.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, anybody here to speak on this item?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I think I understand the desire to have the flexibility that's being suggested to put into city code, and I don't necessarily have any overall objections to that specifically, but I do have a festering concern with regards to how often you might do that. It's really advantageous for the general public to be able to know where they will meet. And knowing, in fact, that it's the second and last Tuesday at 6:30 or 7 o'clock is something that they know and is expected. If you were to take an approach that says, I only have to give 24 hours notice, as a member of the public, I would find that to be unacceptable, maybe legal, but unacceptable. 3 days notice or published in the newspaper, yeah, that's helpful and it's probably statutory. Keep in mind that people are, creatures of habit. They're going to come to this building for council meetings. And so giving them the right notice and as much notice as possible is something that I hope you would take into account. I did note that in the staff report here that there was a specific reference to the fact that city council chambers is not defined in city ordinance. But I also found that in looking at the changes that are being proposed, that definition doesn't seem to be clarified. Its clarifications are coming in with regards to you can provide rescheduling and choose an alternate location. That red line exists, but shall be held in the council chambers in the second line of the opening paragraph. Probably should say of the municipal building if you want to actually disclose where this city council chambers exists, as was outlined as a deficiency. So I'd offer that as something the council should take up perhaps as an added amendment to the red line that's here. And you would just insert the words of the municipal building after the city council chambers in the second line. The other thing that I would notice is that you want to be able to change the location, but you also want to be able, I think, to change the date and the time. And so when you get into the second paragraph, in the line right after the red line, you might want to insert rescheduled meeting date or time will be given in the same manner as a change in location as it goes on to add in the future, so that you're fully covering yourself with regards to your options of what do you want to be able to change, not just location. I think you want the time and the date as well, and you've done that in the past. So if you're going to fix the code, why not fix for all of those things simultaneously so that you're giving yourself the flexibility and authority that I think the staff report outlines that you really want. Would just be a more succinct way of modifying the code. So as you go on to the next reading or tonight, you could insert, perhaps consider those amendments. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments from the public? Okay. Additional comments from the council on this? Councilman Jensen?
I would just comment that reading through this, I mean, we can do this, but it has to be a majority vote of all of council. So it's not like nobody's going to know this didn't happen until 24 hours later. This is going to happen there's going to be plenty of advance notice before any changes like this happen. It will happen at the council meeting, at least one council meeting previous to the to the one that's rescheduled.
Are there any other comments? If not, I'd take a motion. This would be for first reading. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5676.
Councilman Vaughn,
I will second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Go ahead.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and replacing chapter 2, article 1, section 2-102 of the Fremont Municipal Code and all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. That's item 26, Council Member Ganem item, update and discussion regarding the Open Meetings Act and public comment. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. We have brought up about public comment many times at our meetings, and even council people have always wondered, why can't we interact with the people who elect us? Why can't we ask questions or clarifications, or if we have answers, to answer your questions? And I have tried very hard, and I know Travis took the extra step to go to our state attorney generals to ask their opinion. And in the meantime, since we've done that, the law has since changed again. And so I asked Travis to please give a report and update, partly because we bring these things up at the meetings and nothing's ever said or done or brought up again. So you don't know what's going on behind scenes, or if we've even pursued it, or we just dropped it entirely. So I've asked Travis to give a report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ganem. So yeah, we put together a short memo to be included in the packet, and the change in the Open Meetings Act that you referenced is included in our memo. And the main change that was noted by the unicameral was in 84-14-12 paragraph 2. They struck out the line that said a body may not be required to allow citizens to speak at each meeting, but it may not forbid public participating in all meetings. So that line has been stricken from the legislation. As it stands right now, the way we conduct our meetings, we are still compliant with the Open Meetings Act, so we don't have a worry. There. The other aspect that you were concerned about was the specific legal analysis as to why during an open public comment forum that members of the council cannot have a discussion with the member of the public who is speaking. And that's really because of the Open Meetings Act requirement that anything discussed at a council meeting has to be noticed previously with reasonable advance notice to the public, such as put on the agenda. And so because members of the public come to speak to the council, the items that they're speaking about aren't included on the agenda. So therefore, we advise that that was a violation of the Open Meetings Act, and the Attorney General's office did agree with that. So those were the two big distinctions that I think we were wanting to hit on. So if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Councilman Horner.
I've just got one quick one. And this is just for my clarification. I read it somewhere in here, and I'm earlier, and now I'm having trouble finding it again. But one of the reasons, other than what you mentioned, that we don't have it already on the agenda, so we can't really talk about it because then we'd be violating the open meeting rule. But the other part of it is that the agenda put together by the council is really the council's agenda. So anything off of that, we haven't agreed to. We haven't even, because we're going to vote on the agenda, right? I mean, that's one of the things we're going to do. So I guess I could see where us starting to comment could create problems along those lines. But is there any problem, I guess, with following up later to answer questions, that came up in public comment period?
No, that would not be a problem, and I'm sure you've had to do that before, from my experience anyway, yeah. But if the intent was to have a dialogue in the council chambers, the idea would be to have, the council would authorize members of the public to add items. So it'd come through a policy or an ordinance change.
Councilwoman Ganem.
Now, mine was for clarification, and the intent initially of doing it the way we were doing it is that any questions that you had could be answered by a director or another staff member at another time. So if you really have a question, then you can have that answered. And I have followed up with some of the questions to some of the directors, and they do follow up and try to get to you. Now, when you sign in, they don't ask for your phone number for contact. They don't ask for your email for contact. And part of the reason is that becomes record. However, I would suggest that if you want to be contacted, you can add your phone, but you have to be aware that it would be a public record. So your name and your address that you give when you come up to speak, it becomes part of public record. Of course, that's why some people come and speak, because it becomes part of public record. But your phone number and emails are not listed. And I think perhaps we might want to consider saying, hey, it's public information, but if you want to list your phone number or an email, please feel free to do so.
Councilmember Von Baron.
I really appreciated Councilwoman Ganem bringing this up. If you followed the legislature over the last few years, this has been a fairly hot item. And if you talk to a year and a half ago, I talked with the Attorney General's office, and they plainly said the law was, as written, was poorly written, that the intent of the Open Meetings Act was never, ever to shut down public comment. And so it's good to clarify that. And this is not, take these next comments as just an observation, because this isn't picking at anybody, but I went back and I looked at the history of this thing, where we've been in the last 16 months. And it's kind of interesting, because I think it probably tells us something about ourselves. 16 months ago, of course, we were going through the consent agenda, and we were frustrated with that. And so our solution was to stop the public from removing items from that agenda and just limit to the council people. Like last April, and legally, I might add, our library used this to silence comment on some pretty controversial books that had become of broad interest. But I think one of them that was maybe one of the most telling was last July. If you remember the comments, there were some fairly heated comments, even from the public, about comments not being vetted, being false or untrue. It didn't say as judged by who, but comments that are personal, comments that maybe were even potentially libelous. Last fall, we had comments made at a meeting that led to a discussion about the public comment period being broken last November. And I think it was probably a well-intended move that did not pan out well, but we chose not to let public comment be seen by the public. And I think, and that's not necessarily to point fingers at anyone, but I think it tells us something about ourselves. Human nature is that when you don't like somebody, something, well, like somebody, or especially what they're saying, the first impulse is to just shut them down. Speech, just by its nature, is a very messy thing. You could see it on the college campuses right now. It's bordering on, I think we're bordering on some illegal activities, but free speech is messy. It's not necessarily meant to be complimentary. It's not doesn't have to be judged to be true. It's just free speech. Because the problem is anytime you try to regulate it or put restrictions on it or limit it in any way, you can't do that without interfering with the rights of the person trying to accomplish it. I think one of the things we have to recognize is that we always say that concerns can be brought to the council by the public through their councilman. I think time has shown that the public doesn't have a lot of faith in that approach. And so I think it's especially important, since they have no real way of putting anything on the agenda, that we maintain this vehicle to speak. I think the other thing that's reflects on me as much as anybody is that as we watch our public officials, what we've seen when we're faced with disagreement, the easy solution is just try to silence those who are speaking. But at the same time, if you notice, there was no indication that we would place those same restrictions of truth, respect, honesty on ourselves. And I think we have to be very, very careful that as a public body, we don't try or pretend to put restrictions on the public that we will not put on ourselves. If we're going to require that comments be true or respectful or whatever, it's only fair that we require that of ourselves. And I think we can all point to comments over the last few years that have violated every one of those precepts from behind these desks, myself probably included. So I think there's a valuable lesson to learn here about when we're trying to judge public comment, we really need to be careful. We have the power to put regulations on people that we would not put on ourselves. I don't think any of us intend to do that. And I especially appreciated Councilwoman Ganem for you bringing this up. It gives us a chance to discuss things like this.
Moved a little bit, I had to.
Any other discussion from the council on this item? This is a discussion item, so. Anybody here to speak on this?
Brad Yerger, 2318 East Fifth Street. I believe this particular agenda item is deserving of considerable attention since public comment and the opportunities and state law interpretation have been a contentious matter in the past. To start with, I want to applaud and thank Senators Albrecht, Sanders, Conrad, and Buer for this legislation that facilitates and clarifies the public's right to speak at public meetings. Senator Albrecht's 2023 bill, LB 637, started the ball rolling by eliminating the last sentence of section 841412, paragraph 2. This has been the sentence most often taken out of context, abused, or misinterpreted by some, including Fremont's own lawyers, as a means of curtailing public input and comment. Although Senator Albrecht's effort stalled, in 2024, LB 43 was introduced by Senator Sanders, and the bill was subsequently amended by Senator Brewer in LB 43 AM 2812 to incorporate Senator Albrecht's original statutory changes. The amended LB 43 bill passed 39-0. The new law makes it clear that the Open Meetings Act requires the public to be granted an opportunity to speak at public meetings. As a result, a couple questions may come to mind. Were the legislature's and the governor's actions important to Fremont, or how does the revised law impact Fremont? Well, Fremont's municipal code already provides for public speaking at city meetings, and it sets forth rules for council and public participation. I believe the effects of LB 43 simply serve to ratify what Fremont already has in place. Moreover, the revised 841412 language should be something that helps put to rest misguided attempts to stifle public input. Clearly, the state's Open Meetings Act was and is intended to create transparency in government. Public speaking opportunities and current provisions of the Fremont Municipal Code approved by previous councils have been and are in place for good cause. Since the city government is a representative form of government, it's paramount that the elected officials hear from the people that elected them. Speaking directly to the council as a body is the most efficient means for the public to communicate and expose issues to council and the entire city. This is true even if direct interactive dialogue and discussion between council members and the public is not allowed. Listening to constituent opinions, perspectives, and concerns is the duty of every elected position. For many years, council meetings have afforded the public an opportunity to speak on any and all issues on the published agenda, except for executive session. A few years ago, an additional end-of-month opportunity to speak to any issues not on the agenda was enacted to give the public an even greater megaphone on matters they felt the council should be aware of or that they wanted action on. This was all part of a deliberate attempt to promote transparency in government. Over time, there have been efforts to thwart public comment. Case in point, there were proposals to restrict discussion regarding the consent agenda items or other portions of the agenda that were moved to a special section that affords no public comment. There have also been proposals circulating about eliminating the open public comment period. Promoting transparency builds community consensus, and recent changes to the state's Open Meetings Act statutes appears to ratify the multifaceted approach Fremont has been using all along. I urge this council to avail itself of every opportunity to take advantage of public comment. Listen to your constituents, give them a chance to talk to you. The tools that you've been using are the most effective means, even though sometimes I know as sitting in your chair, it was difficult perhaps to hear some of the things you didn't want to hear. But it's important to hear from your constituents nonetheless, and to follow through with them as was suggested, to make sure that they're aware that you heard them and that you'll take action or why you can't. So I encourage that latter part to be done because it was one of the failures, I think, with regarding bringing public's comment into play and the open public comment period, and follow through is important. Thank you.
Larry Marvin, 1945 Morningside Road. And from the bottom of my heart, I thank each of you for running for office. I think that you read the paper and there's no competition, so we're very satisfied with you, but we still want to inspire you to do better. So that's what I'm after is to help you improve, and I hope you do. So thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Are there any additional discussion items on this or any further discussion, Councilmember Ganem, you'd like to bring forward? Okay. Councilman Jensen?
Well, I'll just bring forward, I've been on this council probably longer than just about anybody else has been here. And I was here when some of the restrictions we've got, they call it restricting free speech. I do not. We've got clocks on the wall now where we didn't have them before. Anybody could speak as long as they wanted, as much as they wanted, whether it was their only opinion or not. There were times we were here till 2 o'clock in the morning and we weren't getting through the agenda. Those days are gone. And as long as things keep continuing the way they are, I see no reason to change in what we're doing because everybody's kind of gotten things back to, we're back to normal. We're back to conducting the business of the city, which is what we're here to do anyway.
Right. Anything else? If not, we will move on to the next item. So thank you for your comments. Right, we'll move on to the next item, 27, Council Members Lathrop, Ganem, and Sukram item, Ordinance 5677, amending Fremont Municipal Code Section 5-213 regarding utility vehicle length. This would be for first reading. Staff. Yeah, which council member wants to take this one? Councilwoman Ganem?
Guess it probably doesn't matter which one of us takes it, but this was to update an ordinance because some of the vehicles are longer than what we require, what our ordinance requires. They couldn't get one that small. So this was an opportunity to change the ordinance to match some of the newer vehicles.
Okay. Councilman Sukram?
Yeah, and this is long overdue to be updated because these vehicles have changed in the past 5 years, at least 10 different times that I know of. They've gotten longer, wider, more stable and faster. So I'm glad we're bringing this forward. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from the council to the council members bringing this forward? Okay. Any comments from the public on this? Additional comments from council, Councilmember Sukram?
No.
No, okay. Councilman Horner?
I wanted to ask, and that was, I suppose the change is going to affect parking downtown, so you would have longer vehicles being able to park downtown, which doesn't matter to me, but just so we understand what's coming, I don't even know what the length of a parking space is. Is this going to still accommodate this new length? Are we going to be repainting lines or anything like that?
Councilman Sukram?
No, these vehicles are still shorter than average cars, although they're getting awful close. Some of the 4-seaters and 6-seaters are getting pretty close, but it shouldn't, it's not gonna affect any parking. They're still not near as wide as a vehicle, a car or a truck, so.
To be clear, these are for utility type vehicles. So currently our code says it's 135 feet in length. State statute allows up to 180 is it feet, not feet, inches. Yeah. Inches. 180. Yeah, we would need longer stalls for that. 180 inches. So that's what state statute allows. So that's what this is doing. There's no other comments. Would take a motion. This would be to hold first reading of this ordinance. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make the motion to hold first reading of ordinance 5677.
Councilman Vaughn.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
First reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and replacing chapter 5, article 2, section 5-213 of the Fremont Municipal Code and other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on first reading.
Councilman Jensen.
I'm going to make the motion to suspend the rules and move ordinance 5677 to third and final reading.
Councilwoman Ganem.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, we'll have final reading here.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, repealing and replacing chapter 5, article 2, section 5-213 of the Fremont Municipal Code and all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect on final reading.
Okay. Cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Okay. Take a motion to adjourn. Councilman Jensen.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilman Vaughn.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.